I would like to welcome and properly introduce this evening's presenter, Beth Solomon. Beth Solomon began her career as a radio reporter in East Africa for the Voice of America. As a freelance producer for ABC News, she covered the fall of the Berlin Wall and the first democratic elections in Eastern Europe after the breakup of the Soviet Union. Solomon then worked for Cox newspapers, writing op-eds for the Atlanta Journal and Constitution and the Palm Beach Post, later becoming a speechwriter for the U.S. Senator Sam Nunn from Georgia, longtime chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee. After leaving Capitol Hill, Solomon represented writers and directors at a major Hollywood talent agency. She then went on to roles in politics, financial services, and international humanitarian aid. Author of Georgetown Dish, a behind-the-scenes look at Washington's most influential neighborhood, Solomon graduated from Yale with a degree in history. So before we officially pass it off to this amazing presenter we have that I think is one of the most relevant speakers we've had, we are going to do a quick poll that I would love for you all to answer. So Gaddafi is going to get that started. And if anyone doesn't see it, the question is, have you been fired? Safe space, of course. Okay. Looks like we have about 50-50. Yes and no. Oh, a little bit more. Okay, yep, we're still at 50-50. Exactly. So I will go ahead and end this poll. Or no, I guess we're at 10 of 14. So if you did not have a chance to answer, feel free to put it in the chat if you feel so inclined. It looks like we're at 7 out of 12. Yes, 58%. So slightly leaning towards yes, you have been fired. It is more common than you would ever anticipate. But with that, I'm officially going to pass it over to our amazing speaker, Beth.
Well, thank you so much, Laura and Gaddafi and 40 plus. I'm just so glad to be back. I gave a talk. I met with this group in 2019 when I was really just starting the book, and it's hard to believe it's 5 years have gone by. But it's just so great to be back, because it was actually speaking with 40 plus that I got a lot of inspiration for the book. And I'm especially glad to see some friends and even relatives I recognize who are with us tonight. I see Aloha, and Al Pasternak, Uncle Alfie, if you're there. And hopefully Mark Pasternak too. So thank you so much for having me, Laura and Gaddafi and 40 plus. Well, I'm here because I've been fired. I was fired a lot. In fact, I've been fired more than anyone I know. And I used to be kind of embarrassed about that, actually very embarrassed about it. But then I realized there was a story in all those pink slips and all those dismissals. And I started to think, gee, why did this happen? And started to think about it. But I also realized that, yes, I am good at getting fired, but I was also good at getting hired. So I wanted to kind of share that experience, really starting and humanizing it for many people, because we don't talk about being fired. It's just, if you go to a group of people and you start talking about their careers, it really doesn't come up, because it's just something that makes a lot of us embarrassed and confused and humiliated, and it's something that we just don't talk about much as a society, but there's no reason for that. And what I realized, despite a great education, extremely supportive parents, I went to an Ivy covered college and had graduate courses and so forth. I mean, I grew up in Bethesda, Maryland. So despite that head start in life, I was fired over and over again. And I realized over time that just because you're smart, you're qualified, you're working hard, it doesn't mean that you won't get dismissed, overlooked, or just plain fired. And so the purpose of this book, From Fired to Fabulous, is to really say, look, not only is this inevitable, especially in the increasingly transitional workplace, we have a very transitory workplace, But the inevitable bumps and bruises, especially being fired, can be and should be a catapult to something much better. And in my case, even though I was sort of, it just like things didn't work out every couple of years, my compensation increased by 400% in 10 years. And so I started to do some research that actually you have to change jobs to increase your value and your compensation and your opportunities. And so I wanted to help other people really through the hardest part, which is just dealing with this super unpleasant thing. I mean, one person called it, this is the worst day of your life. At the time it feels like that, and it takes a while for your ego to recover, but in fact it's a very valuable experience. The thing is to set your mind to think about it that way, and then understand that there really are like basic steps that you and practices you need to turn it into something positive. And so From Fire to Fabulous is my kind of guidebook to getting fired, and getting through the morning after, and the picking yourself up and dusting yourself off, but then also how to really turn it into a launch pad to better jobs, more opportunities, better compensation, and a better life. And so I'm really delighted to be here tonight. And what I really wanted to do, I hope it's okay, Laura, but I think it would be great if we just it would be great if people just introduce themselves if they like, and or let's just jump right into the conversation. Like, what happened to you and why are you interested in this topic? And I'd like to hear from you and really make it useful.
I love that, Beth. So, folks, feel free to either write in the chat, raise your hand. If there was a pause, feel free to unmute yourself and just make sure to introduce yourself. While folks are thinking of that, I did already receive one question in the comment or in the chat box. So, Beth, is your firing based on performance, downsizing, etc.?
No, that's a great question. So I was never fired for what they call cause. Like, I wasn't doing anything wrong. It wasn't I stole or lied or didn't show up for work. But I would, it's fair to say it was, in some cases it was for performance. I mean, one of the most shocking experiences I had was had been the CEO of a very small trade organization for about 18 months, and it was a kind of a dying organization. Membership had been fading. The 25-year previous CEO had been there, kind of in an ongoing feud with the board of directors, and revenues were going down, membership was going down. And they said, look, this is an organization on life support. You need to come in, Beth, if you're interested in this, like, you need to fix it. You need to like do a complete overhaul. And I kind of like that challenge. I mean, I was always entrepreneurial. I like building things. And so I got to work, and the office was this termite infested place in the suburbs, and there were things flying around, and like mail was piling up on the desks, and there was all the employees had left, and there were these letters from the IRS saying you have lost your nonprofit status, you were in violation. And so it was really like an overturned car in a ditch, and it was my job to come in and fix it, and I liked that. And so that's what we started doing. And I worked with a small group of the board. I mean, nobody knew exactly how much money the organization had because the accountant had left for Florida and nobody could reach her. Um, and so we started to turn it around, and I had hired 5 great a new team. And so it was like a year and a half into it, and I was being paid pretty well, but my compensation was a third or 40% less than most CEOs in the same job. And I just thought, you know what, I asked for a raise because I just thought, look, this is one more thing that probably needs to be fixed for everybody. So the board members came in. I didn't really know why we were meeting. They asked for the meeting, but it was kind of time to discuss the budget. So my team, we were ready for them to arrive at 9 a.m. I'd gone to the gym. I was all dressed up in a nice pantsuit, and they came in, and I had gone. We had like bagels and pastries and coffee and tea, and the board members came in. There were three of them, the chairman, the vice chair, and the treasurer. And I said, oh, great, welcome. What would you like? Coffee, tea. So we sat down in the conference room, and the treasurer said, Beth, shut the door. And I thought, wow, okay, well, that's a little abrupt, but he was kind of a brusque New Yorker, a lawyer. Said, oh, yeah, fine. I jumped up, I shut the door. And the chairman of the board, a small woman with very nice auburn curly hair, she pulled out this stack of paper and she started reading from it. And her head was down like this, and she was reading, and her hands were shaking so much. I mean, you could practically hear, it was like a bird wings flapping. I mean, you could practically hear the pages. And she started to read, and she said, the board of directors met on May 15th, and a majority voted to terminate your employment effective immediately. And you can clear out your possessions now, or we can box them up and have them sent to you. We'd like you to sign this non-disclosure agreement right now. Do you have any questions? And so it's a performance issue, right? To your question, Laura, to the question that was asked. And while she was reading, I like, my head was spinning. Like, I just like, oh my God, is this is this a movie? Like, I'm completely shocked and taken by surprise. And I just thought for a second, and I said, why? Why? I mean, that was the question I had. Why? I I wanted to know why. Was it something I did? I mean, and she said, no, she said, we've just decided to move in a different direction. And I listened to that. I said, okay, well, is it something I did? Because I want to know if it is. And she kind of looked down at her papers, and the vice chair was looking down, and she said, no, Beth, no, we've just decided to move in a different direction. And so I'm listening to this, and I said, okay, well, I'd just like to talk with my team. My team was right outside the conference room, like 5 young women, basically. I'd just like to talk with them. And I was thinking, so they don't have to they don't have to experience this shock that I'm going through. And they said, your team has left the building. So they had taken the team to the Starbucks or something across the street. I mean, so they said, so this was going nowhere, right? And you're just trying to hold yourself together in this moment. And try to just stay composed. And what you're thinking is like, oh my God, what am I going to do? This is crazy, help. I mean, you're just try not to cry. I mean, you're just thinking all these things. And they said again, would you like to clear off your desk, or would you like us to box up your stuff and we'll ship it to you? And I looked over at my nice white desk. We had this kind of open space. So there were sort of 5 or 6 desks in the open space outside the conference room. And we had built those desks. I mean, those IKEA desks. I mean, this was all us kind of building this thing from scratch. And I saw the sunlight shining there on my little IKEA desk. And I just thought, I need a moment to think. And I said, I'll clean out my desk. And then I basically swept all my laptop, my headphones, a couple of photos, hairbrush, I mean, a couple of books, whatever you have with you. I just swept it into a few bags. And in that few minutes, I felt better. And the little red like beacon, like a light in the middle of the ocean, sort of a little channel lit up in my brain that said, you know what, Beth, this is ridiculous. These people are ridiculous. Their mistake. Beth, you're going to be fine. And I was just able to sort of feel that inner confidence. And by the time I left, I think I was quite calm, or pretending to be calm. And I said to them, well, good luck. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know. Like, I just wanted them just not to see any kind of emotion. Of course, what I was thinking was, holy, you know what? But what I want to say there, a long-winded answer to the question is, yeah, that was performance, but I went through months and months of trying to figure out what I did wrong. But board members that I stayed in touch with, they said, no, it wasn't that bad. There was just a new leadership, new chairman of the board coming in. He wanted to do it his way. You weren't really compliant. You were a different type of leader. I was really setting a direction. And somehow when you fall out from the direction, you often get new bosses, and all of a sudden you're sort of maybe going in different directions, and I didn't realize it. So I was fired. Now, I will say, I got a lawyer, and I ended up being paid for a full 2 years with health insurance after only working for 18 months. And had I known at the beginning of the assignment that, okay, you're going to work for 18 months, but you'll get paid for 2 years, like, I would have signed on. Like, that's awesome. But it didn't, it happened with a firing, and that, that really runs over your ego like a truck. I mean, but this is the modern workplace. And that was a particular situation. I mean, working for a board of 25 people. I mean, of course, I was a first-time CEO working for a board, so I probably could have been smarter, should have been smarter about, like, just cultivating the board and not rocking the boat. But I think if you're a change agent, you're really brought in to fix something or build something or do something different, you're inevitably stepping on somebody's toes. And so part of losing your job or getting passed over or not getting the promotion is, if you were hired to make change, if you're innovating, you're automatically stepping on somebody's toes. And in the modern workforce, where a lot of people are hanging on, maybe they just have bills to pay, they don't think they can get a better job, they don't want to get another job, you can unsettle the apple cart just by being an achiever. And so that's part of the story. The workplace is not fair. Like, you think it's fair. It's not. It's just a group of people with all the pluses and minuses of any group of people. And you can be doing a great job. That can be actually the reason you got fired. The definition of losing your job, getting fired, not getting promoted, whatever it is that you weren't a good fit for what that is. That has nothing to do with your the talents and skills that you bring. It's just sort of how it maps to these other personalities in the mix. And so what I want to say in From Fired to Fabulous, and what the book is really about, is if it happens to you, don't spend too much time beating yourself up and trying to figure out what you did wrong. A lot of times, what you did wrong was actually right. The people who were on the receiving end, for whatever reason, they weren't ready for it, or they didn't like it, or the toughest moments after being fired are those, those initial few days where you're just like, oh my God, in my case, oh my God, this happened again. But of course, it was a great thing that happened to me, because I got better jobs. And when that happened to me, and I'm so glad to see some friends in the group, because it's all about the friends you make along the way. When I did get fired, I would call my friends, aloha, I'm sure I reached out to you multiple times and said, guess what? I'm looking for another opportunity. And then if you've kind of been a good colleague to people and been supportive of people, you're amazed that they say, and I'm sure Aloha did, said, of course, Beth, let's have coffee. And so that then getting fired, or some of the worst things that happen to you in the workplace, are not that bad, because you've built sort of you've built a set of friends and people who know you, and they will come forward in those moments. And of course, it's almost worth getting fired to see that the friends you have, that they don't care that you got fired. They know it's going to happen to them. Happens to most people. And so this book, From Fired to Fabulous, has some of those practices that you can do along the way, including preparing financially, so that when this happens, and it probably happens to most people, you're ready for it and you just bounce back better than ever.
Excellent answer, Beth. There is some good stuff in this chat as well. Like, you are not alone
Awesome.
here, Beth, as you know, which is why you wrote this book. So
Great.
multiple stories, but I do want to jump to, there was one specific question that I thought was really relevant to folks. So Mike Campbell said, I'm interested in how the step/practices may be helpful for someone who has a long gap of unemployment. So if there's any kind of advice you might have for someone that was fired, is still dealing with unemployment, we'll bring that to the table.
Absolutely. Well, your resume is where that shows up. So if there's a long gap, that's sort of where it would show up. What I would say is, and of course, sometimes it takes a while. I mean, it can take a few years to sort of go from one good job that you like to the next one. The thing is to fill up the top of that resume. So, easiest thing, set up your own consulting shingle. Okay, it's Mike Campbell and Associates. Here's what we do. You may be doing some pro bono work. You may be volunteering. You have something at the top of your resume, and Mike, this can go from the date that you were of your last job to the present. Mike Campbell and Associates. And then, you want to do things, if you don't have kind of a long-term assignment, I would call it. I mean, jobs are really assignments. If you don't have a long-term one, like, fill up that resume with the shorter term ones. And for instance, let's say you are you are in finance and accounting or something like that. Or let's say you're in PR or IT. You just Mike Campbell and Associates, or give it a different name. And then it's really up to you to describe what that is. Oh, well, I'm the treasurer, the volunteer. You don't have to put volunteer in the description necessarily, but providing financial assistance to Westbrook Elementary School PTA, or on the like building committee at the YMCA. I mean, there are all kinds of, frankly, volunteer things you can be doing that, depending on how you describe them, they are somehow, they are related to what you have to offer. And so the main thing, I think, when you have a resume where that kind of last assignment is further and further in the past, in the timeline, put up your own shingle. And you know, you have all the control over how you describe what you're doing. And then, of course, another good thing to do is, depending on what field you're in, take some courses. A lot of courses are online now. Got a certificate in network administration. You know, you just fill up the top of that resume so that it not only, it makes it easier for the employer, because they, you know, a lot of potential employers, they kind of get it when you have a big gap on your resume. A lot of times they get it. They really don't want to hear the whole story of, well, I didn't really have a job for 6 years. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear you tell the story of, oh yeah, well, I moved on from IBM in 2016, and since then I've had my own consulting firm, and I've been doing various assignments. So and what that does is not only makes it easier for the employer, but it makes it easier for you. Gives you confidence you really want to present the case that I'm qualified to do this job. I'm ready to do this job. And the interesting thing, you know, 40 plus is presumably, you know, oriented to folks who are, you know, north of 40. What I realized in the research for this book is that there's a lot of disappointment out there about young workers. That especially Generation Z, they are getting fired in record numbers in the first 6 months. And the reason is, and you know, this is something we also have to work on as a society, but the reason is that they don't have the kind of professional, like, knowing how things work and how to behave and how to write and how to respond. So, you know, in interviews, I heard this over and over from employers. Younger people would apply and say, well, I don't want to work on Fridays. Or, you know, what do you mean by full time? I mean, you know, I have a dog. I want to walk and do laundry and, you know, stuff like that. So I think those of us who've been around a little longer, I think we have some advantages here. And so that gap in employment can be turned into, you know, you just need to sort of fill it in. You just say, oh, okay, well, last big assignment was 2017. So from 2018 until the present, it's Mike Campbell Associates. Here are the kinds of things I've been doing. And of course, you need to fill that in. But the beauty of it is, if it was like 2 months working with, you know, the Westbrook Elementary PTA, you don't necessarily have to describe it that way. You have license to say, well, I've been a financial analyst for the Westbrook PTA, and it doesn't have to have dates on it. And as a consultant, you know, you are the boss of how you present that information. I hope that's helpful.
I thought that was a great answer, Beth. A couple other questions in here, so we'll kind of bounce around. So first one from Jody. She said she's reached out to her network. Some have done their best to help, but most of the network are not decision makers. So they are limited in how they can help. So far, she has not had any opportunities come through her network. Any tips?
So I'd love a little more information, Jody. And Jody, what are you looking for?
Yeah, ideally, it would be communications. I like to explain things with visuals, so videos. But I only have 3 years of experience doing that, and my previous experience is with technical writing. So it's in information technology, computer software area. But yeah, most of my were, you know, my coworkers as I was doing these jobs, and not really, I mean, there were a couple managers and I did reach out to them, but yeah, I just haven't had any, you know, nobody's really said, oh yeah, I know something, or here, let me connect you with this person that is looking for someone. So
Great, Jody. Well, I'm glad to hear what you're talking about, and I would say that's a very powerful combination, that the combination of video and then being a technical writer, because that is sort of, there's technical writing, which is very technical, and there's video, which kind of makes it accessible to a lot of people. So what I would do is, you know, LinkedIn is a fabulous innovation that really puts you in front of a lot of people, actually an infinite number of people. And what I would be doing is using that platform to start posting some of the things you're doing. And also because there's no limit to, I mean, LinkedIn lets you connect to sort of your second degree, in other words, friend of a friend connections. But if you start posting, you're really opening up the audience. So I think what I would do is, I don't know if you've worked on your LinkedIn profile, but I would turn it into something that sort of positions you for the jobs you're looking for. And then I would post videos. I mean, video is the it's sort of the catnip of the internet. Like, videos are what attract the eyeballs, so to speak. And so I would start, if you're a content producer, I would start putting that stuff up there. And then LinkedIn also lets you look at other people's profiles, and it lets you look at jobs. Like if you see jobs that look like they're of interest to you, use some of that language. Put it in your description of yourself. Post, you know, start to post things that sort of move you in that direction. It's great that you reached out to your network, because 90% of jobs are filled by sort of a combination of a good resume, and that the hiring manager actually knew the person who recommended that person. So the resume came from a trusted source. So you're doing the right thing. I would definitely post more on LinkedIn, and then find more friends on LinkedIn. You don't need to know them. I have 6,000 LinkedIn connections. I would say 95% I don't know, but I saw something in their background that was of interest, and I sent them a friend request. And with your set of skills, there are people, that's a very specialized set of skills, and those people want to know each other. So I would just maybe think about using LinkedIn, since you are a content creator, to get yourself to a broader audience.
okay, yeah, I can do that. I have posted just like, I have a lot of my videos on LinkedIn, but you're right, I don't post very often. So I'm sure I know I could do a better job of that. Thank you.
That's great, Jody. And I would also, you know, LinkedIn lets you recommend other people, kind of verify other people's skills and stuff. Like, it doesn't need to be that complicated, but you can sort of give other people a boost and sort of get noticed that way. So yeah, I think LinkedIn is a good direction, just to sort of boost your profile, and then see what comes of it. And then, you know, don't be afraid to say, oh, you liked my video. I would love to pick your brain about what's happening in the technical writing field, or what Rand Corporation is doing, that kind of thing.
Thank you so much, Beth, for that one.
Thank you.
Sorry, Joe, did you have something else? I didn't want to cut you off.
No, I was just gonna say thank you, but you took care of it. Thanks.
Thanks, Jody. Thanks for the question.
Teamwork there. Okay, so I'm kind of going to do a two-part question here. So one, hearing that some people don't stay your friends because they feel like getting fired is contagious. Like you experience kind of a change of your social circle, and then simultaneously, once you're fired, and especially if you are above the age of 40, there is the sense of ageism just constantly looming that makes it harder to achieve that next job. So if you have anything to speak about the friends treating you differently / a weird social interaction, and then dealing with ageism after being fired.
Well, that's a great question. And one chapter in my book is kind of like how to deal with the social aspects of it right after, because you're hurt, you're angry, you're confused, you're scared. And so you're calling up your friends and saying, you won't believe it. I mean, I got fired. In my case, I got fired again. And your good friends will say, oh my God, that's crazy. They're so stupid. They didn't deserve you. And you say, yeah, they're idiots. And so there's that kind of private conversation that goes on that's very important, where you need to really like let loose with your upset about what happened. But for the vast majority of people that you are then in contact with, that's not useful. Because what you really want is to immediately switch gears and be talking about the next, your next opportunity, what you're looking for. So for example, I got fired from this small trade association. The private story is, those idiots, I worked so hard. I can't believe it. They took advantage of me. They didn't understand. They're idiots. I'm so depressed. I don't know what to do next. Your public story is same incident. Oh, well, I learned a lot in that assignment, and now I'm looking for my next one. I really learned a lot about the financial industry, but I'm really interested in going back to communications. What are you doing? So you see that you're for the public, and I think the question is about the awkwardness of dealing with sort of the social consequences. The bottom line is you want to just make it sound like past tense, good experience, on to the next thing. Because it's sort of like smiling when you come into the world. Like if you smile, the world smiles back. And what you want to do after you've been fired, especially, is bring your best self, your best positive, engaging self out back into the public to say, that was a great experience. I learned a lot. And now I'm really thinking about doing X. So what are you doing? What are you up to? Or do you know anyone in that field? And this changes it from, oh, this was a terrible thing that happened, to, yeah, great experience, on to the next thing. And I know that's easier said than done, but it is really, I think, essential for getting through the awkwardness. I had a young man come to me. He was had graduated from George Washington University. His stories are in the book, and he came up to me. I was speaking on a little panel, and he came up and introduced himself, and he shook my hand, and his hand was like a clam. I mean, it was wet and cold, and he was sweating, and he said, I got fired from a job after 6 months, like a year ago, and I can't find another job. And I think that 6 month, and then getting fired is really like sinking my chances. And So basically, I explained to him, look, in today's world, like a 6-month assignment is kind of a long assignment. I mean, depending on how you look at it. But if you let it become this monkey on your back, then it will drag your confidence down. So no, you know, it's sort of like, I think it was like a Rodgers and Hammerstein musical. Um, you know, I whistle a happy tune, like, you know, or singing in the rain, like you have to somehow, no matter how you're feeling inside, your outward appearance for your own sake should be positive. And oh, well, yeah, now I'm setting up my own shingle. You know, I would say in answer to this question, you want to use this time to explore things you like to do. And you know, you could, it can be volunteer experiences or even starting a small business, but it's really important to have something positive to think about. And you know, what I did a couple of times when, after I had lost my job, was I started a little business. And then I had something that was very consuming and positive, and then that's what I talked about. And so, yes, while I was applying for the old sort of jobs I was qualified for, I was really keeping my thoughts into this thing I was building and growing. And it could be anything from, okay, well, you're walking people's dogs, or you're starting a blog. I mean, for Jody, she could be, you know, it could be something to do with video. And it's not like,
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I am actually boarding dogs, which has nothing to do with my video and or technical writing. So I haven't put that on my LinkedIn or my resume because it's so disparate.
you know, Jody, I'm so glad you said that, because I would. There are so many dog lovers out there, and people know that if you can take care of dogs, that you're very trustworthy, you're very caring, and it just shows a lot of responsibility. It shows entrepreneurialism, and who knows what it'll lead to. But I would definitely find a way to put that in there. Thanks
Okay.
for adding that.
Sure, I'll try that. Thanks.
Yeah.
That was a good one. I just wrote in the chat, I have a career counseling client that has a dog walking business, and because dogs are people's lives, so he had multiple wealthy clients say, listen, like, I trust you. Would you manage my property while I'm traveling for months on end, and just make sure you maintain the upkeep? So not hand in hand for a job, but a lot of times if you build that level of trust, they are very willing to put their neck out for you. So I think I really would definitely include that, Jody.
Definitely. Good one, Jody. And I think, you know, today's work landscape is much more sort of iterative and flexible. And businesses, for instance, you know, taking care of people who are traveling, I mean, taking care of their world while they're traveling, that's a really good kind of interim thing that really is, you know, at the beginning, Jody, you said, well, you're, you know, high level people are not among your contacts, but actually, once you get into what you're talking about in terms of people's dogs and so forth, it can be very high level. And that can be sort of a different way to network.
No, well, I have taken advantage of that as well. Like I sent a message to all my clients saying, here's my situation. I'm looking for, a full-time gig again that would be remote so that I can continue to take care of your dogs. And yeah, so far, not a whole lot, but it was worth a try.
Yeah, stay at it and use it on LinkedIn. I think you're really on the right track.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Excellent. Lots of good questions as well. I just put in the chat, additionally, if you are in between jobs and there's not something current on your resume, definitely consider volunteering, not just at 40 plus, but there's many places. So I put a link there as an option. But
Great.
bringing it back, Beth, so based on this conversation, there's still some like experiences in here that I can read on, like people that had a toxic boss that fired them because they were jealous and just not helpful. So based off what you're already hearing right now and themes that relate to your book, what is some other topics or advice that you may want to give that relates back to you?
Well, I'd sort of like to hear more about that toxic boss who was jealous, because you would be amazed at how common that is. And um, this is kind of one of the reasons you get fired. And when you have a toxic boss, and I had one very memorable one. There's really nothing you could do. I mean, you're just sort of surviving. You're doing your best. I mean, in my case, I was just trying not to get fired for 2 years. But every day it was like going in with a raincoat on because it was going to rain that day. I mean, it was in this case, my boss hired me. I don't think she wanted to hire me, but her boss wanted her to hire me. And so there I was, and I couldn't do anything right. Um, so I think what you want to do there is sort of understand that. And there used to be sort of more strict, I think, kind of practices about, well, you really have to be there a year, or you really have to be there 2 years before you start looking. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think the workplace is just much more fluid. So if you're in a situation with a toxic boss, I would just be looking immediately. And if you're good, and everybody in this workshop, I know there are people who know you are good. And if they know you just need to sort of get the word out. The minute things start to go south and you realize like you're in an impossible situation, like start looking immediately. Because if you have to leave after 4 or 5 months, or then there's no point in kind of trying to fix it when you have an impossible situation. Uh, yeah, that's and it does happen. I mean, I had many good bosses, but there are really bad bosses out there, and it's really difficult to survive that. I mean, it can really ruin any job when you have a bad boss. But what I will say is the practice of networking, and everybody who's in this workshop is doing it in a way. You're conscious, you're involved with 40 plus. That's an excellent thing. But you have to be networking, all the time throughout your career, and being ready to support other people. Networking is not just kind of meeting people that you think, may be useful later on. I mean, it is that, but it's also meeting people and then trying to be of help to them. Because when you are that person who is supportive of colleagues for no reason, not expecting anything back, you will build that kind of karmic bank account of people who are there for you when something bad happens to you. I think especially when you know of someone, or you have a colleague who lost their job, or somebody you used to know, meet with them for coffee. Ask what you can do. Ask to see their resume. If you see mistakes on their resume, speak up. Punctuation errors. I mean, you may not technically be helping them to their next job, but the moral support is what sustains people in their worst moment. So the end of my book is really like just some tips about how to sort of conduct your career so that you're always ready with a hand to somebody who may be worse off than you, and just meet with them, talk with them. There may be nothing you can do, but but the fact that you're there and just providing a little bit of moral support in their worst moments, not only does it make, I mean, it just makes you feel good. You're helping your fellow human being, but also you're kind of growing your garden of people who you may forget them, but then when something bad happens to you, they remember how you kind of reached out in the worst moments. And that is a big reservoir of support and contacts when you need to make a change or you're in a bad spot.
I love that, Beth. And the person with the toxic work story is willing to share a little bit more. So, Deidre, over to you.
Thanks, Lori. First of all, can you hear me?
Yes, David.
Okay, great. Sorry, I had another Zoom call on another computer and the sound was horrible, so I'm just still focused on that. First, thanks, Lori, for this wonderful webinar tonight. And Beth, thank you so much for all of your wonderful advice, and everything you said makes perfect sense. I want to start off by saying to my fellow 40 plus folks on the call to remember you are an individual. So when you're faced with a situation, a firing, don't compare yourself to anyone else. You will lose your mind. Don't do it. You may find that someone appeared to be in a situation similar to yours and they got out before they were fired, and you're asking yourself, well, why didn't I get out before I was fired? Don't do it. Don't do it, because your situation is very, very different. My toxic boss came to the organization. I'd been there for a number of years. She came to the organization from another organization, a very big time organization. And I had heard rumors about her, but I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I just continued to do my work. I just did my work, and I'm very good at it. And oh, by the way, own what you're good at. And I think Beth said it earlier. I'm good at project management. You need to own what you're good at. I don't remember the name of the person who said, I only had 3 years of content creation. Stop saying I only had 3 years. Don't even say that ever again. Once you hang up this call, never say that again. Because in those 3 years, you've done some amazing things with content creation and your videos. Focus on that. So I focused on doing my work and doing it well. But I knew from the very beginning, this person was going to be a problem. I could just tell. I could just tell the way she seemed to, from simple things, the way she looked at me when I walked in a room, the way she looked at my wedding ring on my hand because she wasn't married, the way she looked at the fact that I always smile, the way she would say, who was that? Oh, it's my husband. He wanted to know what's for dinner tonight. It didn't matter. But what I understood was this person obviously had a lot of issues that had nothing to do with me, nothing to do with my work, but somehow my very presence, and there were other people that she fired, it wasn't just me. My very presence just brought up her deep-rooted insecurities. And as I began to listen to her in those after 5:30 meetings, little things about her childhood would come out. And I'm like, wow, okay, this person has a lot of issues. I just kept doing my work. Was I looking? I had always been looking because I knew I wanted to get out, but I was, be honest, Beth and folks, I wasn't aggressively looking. I was sort of just looking. I would dabble here, I would dabble there. So make a long story short, I got fired right at the beginning of COVID. And I had left the November before COVID to go to Arizona to celebrate my father-in-law's 100th birthday. So she planted something in my ear when I left, and I didn't think about it, but I knew. I said, oh, this is the beginning. She's trying to get me out. But I was on my way out the door, and we were gone for about a week. When I came back, the little things started happening, more and more. But let me just take it to the point where I was terminated. So now we're in COVID, and so everything's on Zoom, right? Because, it's lockdown. Nobody's going anywhere. All the work is being done at your home office. She called me in and basically said, um, your position is being eliminated because of restructuring. Well, I knew that was a lie.
Yeah.
And so we're on Zoom, but I had my camera on, and she said, I said, okay. And I can't even explain to you why, but I literally was smiling like someone had just given me $1 million. I had this huge smile on my face. I don't even know where it came from. And she said, did you hear what I said? I said, I absolutely did. You said my position is being eliminated. And I kept smiling, and the smile kept getting bigger. And I think I just infuriated her because she wanted to see me break. She wanted to, and so this was malicious intent. She wanted to see me break.
Mhm.
We had a going away Zoom party for me, and her comment was, when other people control your life, you don't know what to do. And I stopped her. I said, let me stop you, boss, and I won't say her name. You don't control my life. The person who runs this organization doesn't control my life. I said, you think you do, but you don't. I said, things happen that we don't plan for, but that's called life, and you don't control it. So I guess I'm saying to anyone who's listening, I don't know how I'm not writing a book about it, but I could say that one of the things that helped me after I was fired was I immediately got into self-care. I started exercising 3 to 4 times a week, started going back to swimming, something I hadn't done in like 15 years. I started volunteering, which is Mike. I think I wrote in the chat. I started my own company. I put everything under that. I don't care what it was. If my faith community, my community association, whatever I put my hands on, this is what I used to say to people that I managed at the job that I was fired. I said, if you put your hands on it, it's yours to own. So if I wrote a paragraph in a 100-page document, I could say I co-wrote that because I put my hands on that. I had some involvement in it.
Right. That's
So
absolutely right.
whatever I touched, I owned. So I started self-care. I started just getting more into the things that I was interested in, reading, singing, whatever it was. That didn't stop me from job hunting. But I really just tried to do the things that I felt were better, that were good for me. Need to drop for mentor call over. Um, and so I really got into myself, but I will also say, take time to be really silent and listen. What I discovered for me is I like this consulting thing. I don't want to work for anybody anymore. I don't want to be in a position where someone doesn't like me just because I walk in a room and I have a wedding ring on. So for me, I saw this as a way for me to do something I finally wanted to do, which was do consulting, which was work for myself. Now, that's not going to be for everybody, but that goes back to what I said at the very beginning. Never compare yourself to anyone. It will creep up on you and you may want to do it. Someone will tell you a story about their situation. They'll say, "Oh, I went through something like that too, but I was lucky. I got out." Don't buy into it. It will drive you nuts. Keep coming to things like this. I'm going to get your book, Beth. Read the book, read everything you can. And in terms of the toxicity when you were working there, I don't really know what to say other than try. We had a horrible HR department, quite honestly, so I couldn't go to them. But if you
No.
can, I would say try, document as much as you can. I tried to sue Beth, but she was clever enough to work it in a way that
Yeah.
I had no case. But truly, I went
That,
to everybody. But thank you. Thanks for letting me talk. Thanks.
oh, thanks so much, Davidra. Those are great comments. And most of the time, HR departments, they're just there to protect the employer. So yeah, document, but they're whatever they say to you, that their job is to protect the employer, frankly, against the employees. And so thank you for those comments. I mean, that's you did exactly what people should do in those situations. I'm just looking at the chat here. There's a concern about ageism, and that's real. So I think in a nutshell, what the standard practice is, take off the bottom of your resume. So you're just showing 15 years of experience, and take the dates off of your education. I think a lot of employers will see through that. They sort of get it, but I think there's so much concern and difficulty with the very young workers that I hear a lot of companies saying, I want to hire people over 50. Now, that's obviously not the case everywhere, but just make your LinkedIn profile and your resume sort of go back 15 years with no dates on your education, and then at least you're sort of a question mark in terms of your age, going into interviews. And I saw another good, this James said, I became a certified car appraiser, totally divergent course from my employment goals. Exactly. This economy and our online, the connectivity you can have online, it just opens up a whole new set of possibilities. So the smart thing, especially if you're 40 plus, is to sort of be open to that and think creatively of you come with all kinds of experience and talents, and you may not think of it as the stuff that you put at the top of your resume, but we got better training in writing and manners. I see Laura nodding her head there. And those are real assets, and they're not things that go on your resume, but they were things that will be noticed once you're in conversation with an employer. So just tailor, if you're over 60 or if you're in your later 50s, I would just really change the resume so that really is not obvious.
I
Excellent. Yep. Laura just wrote in the chat, Gen Z and below are well known to be terrible writers, awful writers in the corporate world. I mean, most people who were educated a few decades ago, we were forced to learn how to write and communicate with manners. And all of that is extremely necessary in any sales, any public facing position, and it also makes you much better to work with. And so employers get that. I mean, I think the millennials, I was amazed to hear as many times as I did, employers saying, yeah, no, I'm looking for older workers now, engineers over 50, people on the sales floor over 50. So I think this can be an upside of the transitional workplace that we're living in. Laura?
love that, Beth. No, I fully agree. I think that there's more and more, I'm hearing the same thing, that folks are just so disappointed with skills that you need to acquire over time, and they just don't have that time. They want people with ready skills. So I do think that you all possess a lot of that, as well as the functional resume and just taking off some of the dates. It's a great way to just avoid some of that initial ageism that is completely unwarranted, but just to at least get it past that first round, functional is excellent.
Great, Lauren. Before we go, I would like to invite everybody in this workshop to, there's a party for the launch of this book. It's not out yet, but there's a party for it at Martin's Tavern on Wisconsin Avenue in Georgetown tomorrow night from 5 to 7. And everybody who's here, we would love to see you and come and get a copy of the book. And yeah, there we go. It's right in the chat there. So come and join us. And I'm just so tickled to be with 40 plus again. And you, everybody in this workshop, you are doing the right thing. By being in this workshop, you are conscious of your networking. Get out there on LinkedIn. Think about the things you like to do. A lot of those are skills that are, you have skills that are useful to other people, whether it's appraising cars or taking care of dogs. Put it on LinkedIn. You never know where that's going to lead.
I love that, Beth. Thank you all so much. A huge round of applause for Beth. This is topic we needed to cover, and we got a lot out of it. I am saving the chat as well so that I can address this later because I think there were some really good stories in here. So make sure to, I posted the link, but I'm going to post it again to the website for From Fire to Fabulous. And I know I am definitely going to get a copy as soon as that is out. I am very excited. So a huge thank you again to Beth. Thank you all for being here tonight. And thank you all so much.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Laura and Gaddafi and 40 Plus, and I'll look forward to seeing you, if not tomorrow night at Martin's, sometime soon, or on LinkedIn. Send me a friend request.
I love it. Thank you all so much. And Beth is easy to find. She has author in her title, so you will be able to find her. But thank you all. Have a great rest of your evening.
Good night. Thank you.